So can you explain the difference between immigration and political asylum?
Yeah, immigration is if people come here for, say, their own benefit. Economic migrants, they come here to work, to make money, to settle down, and they usually come with visas through the correct channels, through the correct schemes, so via work permits or via business visas, or they're married to a British citizens under spouse visas. Political asylum is if you're fleeing your country of origin because you fear persecution and you're being persecuted because of your race, religion, nationality, colour, your creed, your caste, and the country of your origin, the government has failed to offer you protection or is unwilling to offer you protection, and you've got nowhere else to relocate internally in that country. So you have to flee that country and seek refuge elsewhere, somewhere which signs up to a convention, and therefore ask for them to protect you. And because you can't go back because you fear persecution, you fear death, you fear physical violence, or fear you prejudice against.
Okay, but some people still argue, these people are coming over to our country, they're going to sponge off the benefit system. What would you say to them?
Yeah, a lot of times people have done that. I mean, people use political asylum as an excuse to get in, and to really they're economic migrants. 90% of migrants who I see are economic migrants, but because there's no scheme here which they can fit into, because these people are uneducated, they lack skills, and there's no way for them to stay here. So what they do is they claim political asylum. They usually make up a story to say they're being persecuted. That delays them. That allows them to stay here for a little while their cases are considered. And in the olden days, they used to just stick it out here, and they used to change their identities. However, recently the government have cracked down in relation to that. They've started fingerprinting people before they come here, so they know their real identities. They've used fast track systems, so they can decide asylum applications in 15 days if they need to. I mean, in this case, it does seem unique because in my 15 years of practice, I've never ever seen children come on a container or a lorry. I've seen groups of men, normal, see it every day. I've even seen women come on their own, which is for the Asian community quite a big thing for a woman to come in a lorry on her own. But I've seen it. I've seen kids aged 16, 17 come over because they're usually nimble and they're quick and they're easy to hide, so they do it, and they're only a year or two off being 18. But a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 12-year-old, unheard of, unseen of in my life. So this does look like as if it's desperation. Now, whether it's desperation because they want to leave their country and join their relatives in the UK and make money here, or whether it's desperation because they're being persecuted, is something that the government is obviously trying to work out.
But how bad are the conditions for Afghani Sikhs?
They're not good. Put it this way, there's huge evidence from human rights organisations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch to say that Sikhs are persecuted in Afghanistan. At one time there were 100,000 Sikhs in Afghanistan. There's now only 3,000 Sikhs left in Afghanistan, 800 families or so. And there used to be 8 Sikh gurdwaras in Kabul. There's now only one. The main complaints are land grabs, that the land has been grabbed of the Sikhs and not given back. Sikhs have no representation in the Afghan parliament. Same goes for Hindus. A few years ago, it was a rule that if you were a Sikh or Hindu, you had to wear a yellow badge, and that would identify you as a Sikh. Now, how racially prejudiced is that? That's almost going back to the eras of Hitler and Stalin.
Yeah.
And also, one of the main issues is they can't cremate their dead because their funerals are interrupted, and because Muslims believe in burials, and they've had cases where they need police protection at funerals. For one, the funeral wasn't allowed, so they had to send a female's body to Pakistan to have it cremated.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not allowed to practice their religion freely. So there definitely is cause for concern, and definitely is evidence of persecution.
So the government is investigating into the case, and do you think that with the rise in popularity for the UKIP party, the government has pressure to kind of make a political decision on this case, or do you think that they'll have to review the case individually?
I mean, the government's policy is always they treat each case individually, and they look at each case on its merits. Now they'll look at the way these people have come in, look at what they've come for, and then make a decision after interviewing them. But the pressure is there from both sides. UKIP obviously are taking the Tory government's vote, and the government are scared and they want to win the next election, so they're doing a hard, tough line, and they want to show that we're not a soft touch. We're trying to repeal or make the situation that Labour brought in a lot better for immigration. The Sikhs are also putting pressure on the government, saying, well, hold on, 20% of your army in World War One was made up of Sikhs. Over 150,000 Sikhs have died for Britain, fighting for the land they never stepped foot in World War One and Two. Now that our people are in a time of need, are you going to help us? Because we stood up for you and counted. So there's pressure from both sides in the government, and the government, already in trouble with the Sikhs after it's been discovered that they may have been involved in Operation Blue Star, and they sent some sort of advisor to India to advise Indira Gandhi on it. So, the government are not in the Sikhs' good book at the moment anyway, and the Sikhs have a big vote bank here. And now, on top of this, if the government says, right, actually, we're not going to give any Sikhs asylum, or decides to not review the case thoroughly as it should do and bow into political pressure, then they could see a backlash. So the pressure's around from all sides. I think the government have got to play it very carefully here and just say the official line, saying, well, the same rule applies to the Sikhs as everyone else does. We're going to deal with it in the same normal manner that we would to anyone else.
Yeah, and what do you think they should do? What do you think would be the right decision?
All depends on what these people say. If there's evidence that they have been trafficked, and that would be like if they were brought here to be sold on, or brought here to be put into prostitution or used as slaves, then the government usually gives them about a year to sort themselves out. And at the moment, it doesn't look like that's the case. So because these people have claimed asylum. So if the government think, well, hold on, there's a real threat, and that these people, if you send them back, they could be killed or tortured when they go back, then they'll have to give them some sort of asylum or residency here. If not, the recent line on the government has been to refuse asylum in these matters. Then the government will say, sorry, we're refusing you asylum, but we're going to send you back. But there's another problem here. None of these people have IDs, and none of these people have documents, so it's going to be hard to identify them and make travel documents to them. The Afghani government say, well, hold on, they're not even Afghans, so we don't believe they are. They might refuse to issue documents. In that case, removal is going to become hard for the government. It's going to become hard to send them back. So we've got to wait and see. I mean, we'd all like to think that if we get emotional, because the kids are involved, that there should be some sort of residency. But then, will that send out a wrong message to the public? I mean, will that say, well, hold on, anybody with kids can come in a container and we'll have to give them residency? And that might encourage more people to take risks. I mean, this is clearly either an act of desperation, which I'd like to think so, or if it's not, and if it's been planned, then it's a big, big risk to take, bringing your children in a container. This could have been a lot worse than what it's ended up to be. There's already been one death, and apparently the individual who died, his children, cradled him in their arms when he was dying. And so, the price they've paid to come to the UK is that they've lost their father, and they're not going to get him back. So there's a lot of angles here to consider, and before we start judging them, we're very quick to judge a British public. Yeah, they're here to sponge, they're here to eat off the state. But I think the problem has been, there's been so many false asylum seekers who've used and abused the system. They've actually messed it up for the genuine few who want to claim asylum, who need asylum. And that's always the case in immigration. And when the system is abused, then the government have to crack down.